This is how to convert from any scale to any other scale using Celsius and Fahrenheit for an example. First off, notice the equations aren't symmetric when you convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius compared to Celsius to Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit subtracts a number first, Celsius multiplies by a number first. Algebraically, you can see how you can switch back and forth between the two equations, because in this form, you take Celsius times 1.8, which is right there, and then you add 32. But I'm going to show why these equations look this way and how you can make them symmetric. There's 3 rules or 3 steps. Step number 1, get your conversion factor. Step number 2, go to 0 on the opposite scale. Step number 3, use that conversion factor to convert to units on the opposite scale. So step 1, let's look at Fahrenheit to Celsius. We need to know how many units one scale has compared to the other. So we take 2 points on each scale that are equal to each other. In this case, we'll use the freezing and boiling points of water. For Fahrenheit, that's 32 and 212 respectively, and for Celsius, that's 0 and 100. Now we have the exact same length on both scales. Now let's find out how many units we have on that exact same length on each scale. For Fahrenheit, we take 212 minus 32. Because we only want those increments, we don't want the increments from 32 down. So that's 212 minus 32. We do the same thing with Celsius, 100 minus 0. Let's take a ratio of Fahrenheit divided by Celsius in regards to the number of increments they have. That gives us 180 divided by 100, which equals a ratio of 1.8 to 1. This means the Fahrenheit scale has 1.8 more increments over any given length compared to the Celsius scale. That was step 1. Step 2 is we go to 0 on the opposite scale. The reason we want to go to 0 on the opposite scale is because if we take this number, for example, 212 on the Fahrenheit scale, we know that equals 100 on the Celsius scale. Then we have to ask ourselves, what does that 100 mean on the Celsius scale? It means it is 100 units up from 0. So if we're going to start with a number on the Fahrenheit scale, we need to find out how many increments we need to go down to get to 0 on the opposite scale using the increments on the opposite scale. So right here we can see that 212 Fahrenheit equals 100 degrees Celsius because I drew a little dotted line or a dashed line across there. But if you don't have that dashed line, which you won't in most cases, then you just have to do the math. So let's take 212 minus 32. What that does, it gives us the exact number of increments on the Fahrenheit scale from 212 to 32. That will equal 180 increments. But we don't want 180 increments because that would mean that that corresponding temperature on the Celsius scale is equal to 180, which would mean that it is 180 increments up from 0. So we take our 180 increments, which is step 2 right there because we went down to 0 on the opposite scale. Then we go to step 3, which means we need to multiply or divide by our conversion factor. In this case, Fahrenheit has 1.8 more increments than the Celsius scale, so we need to divide by 1.8. Now we know how many units we've went down on the Celsius scale, which will be 100 units. So in the end, we get the formula, Fahrenheit minus 32, to bring us down to 0 on the Celsius scale, and then we divide by 1.8. And that will tell us how many increments we drop down on the Celsius scale. To go from Celsius to Fahrenheit, we do the same thing, but we need to do one extra step with the Celsius. With Fahrenheit, we know that Fahrenheit goes from 212 down to 0, and we know it actually goes all the way down to 0 degrees Kelvin. But let's just stop at 0 on the Fahrenheit scale. If we're going to go from Celsius to Fahrenheit, that means we need to drop from a certain number on the Celsius scale, let's say 100, we have to go all the way down to 0 on the Fahrenheit scale. And then we can find out how many increments we have on the Fahrenheit scale from 0 up to our equivalent number. So first, let's find out what this number is on the Celsius scale that equals 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's plug in 0 degrees Fahrenheit into the formula. So it'll be 0 minus 32 divided by 1.8. And that means Celsius will equal negative 17.77 repeating. Now we have the appropriate number right here on the Celsius scale of negative 17.77 repeating. Now we can take any number on the Celsius scale, drop down to 0 on the Fahrenheit scale, and then find out how many units that is on the Fahrenheit scale. So let's take 100 degrees Celsius, for example, on the Celsius scale. We know that equals 212 degrees Fahrenheit. But if we didn't know what that equaled on the Fahrenheit scale, then we simply take 100 minus negative 17.77. So that's the same thing as saying plus 17.77. So now we know we've dropped 117.77 units on the Celsius scale. But we don't want to know how many increments or units that is on the Celsius scale. We want to know how many increments that is on the Fahrenheit scale. Fahrenheit has 1.8 more increments compared to Celsius. So we simply take our Celsius, 100 degrees for example, minus negative 17.77, multiply that quantity by 1.8, and that'll give us the number of increments we drop down on the Fahrenheit scale. And again, the reason we have to go down to 0 on the Fahrenheit scale is because that number of 212 degrees Fahrenheit means it is 212 units from 0. We can put this equation right here in a couple of different forms. You can take Celsius minus negative 17.77 repeating, quantity times 1.8, or you can distribute that 1.8 through. You get 1.8 Celsius plus 32 equals Fahrenheit. This is the form with which most of us are familiar. Or you could leave 1.8 outside of the parentheses, and you just take Celsius plus 17.77 repeating, then multiply that quantity by 1.8. In my freshman year of college, we were given two forms of this equation. One had 32, the other one had 17.77, and we were told we could use whichever one we wanted, so most of us went with the 32. Notice what we've done here is made these equations symmetric. So with the Fahrenheit scale, we've taken Fahrenheit, subtracted 32 on its own scale to bring us down to 0 degrees Celsius. And with Celsius, we've added 17.77 repeating on its own scale to bring it down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. But now we have our symmetry because in this case, we're taking Fahrenheit minus a number and then dividing by 1.8. And here we're taking Celsius plus a number and then multiplying by 1.8. I did another video that was similar to this one, where I used two made-up scales that were extremely simple and very easy to understand. So you can see that video if you want to see how to convert from any scale to any other scale.